Today we're hitting the endless highways of Texas, where every mile hides a darker secret than the last. From ghostly hitchhikers in white dresses to phantom trucks that vanish without a trace, these roads aren't just long, they're haunted. Get ready for 20 of the scariest true Texas highway horror stories that will make you think twice before your next late-night drive. But before we roll into the terror, here's something strange. Most viewers make the same mistake. They leave without subscribing. And when they do, they miss the most chilling, spine-tingling stories that only the bravest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now. Because today the highway isn't empty and what's waiting in the dark might just be closer than you think. So, where are you watching from? And is it day or night where you are? Let me know in the comments, because here the night never really ends and the horror is only just beginning. Buckle up, let's drive straight into the darkness. I'm not the type to post on Reddit. I don't even have social media unless you count the Facebook account I made back in 2012 to keep up with old coworkers. But what happened to me last month has been rotting in my head like a splinter I can't dig out and I don't know where else to put it. People tell me if you write something down it feels lighter. I doubt it, but I'll try. Maybe it'll help me sleep again, maybe not. This happened on Highway 281 south of San Antonio on a Thursday night in late July. July 18th to be exact. I only know the date because it was my sister's birthday the following day, and I was driving down from Austin to see her in McAllen. It's about a 5.5-hour drive, give or take, and I'd left late, around 9:30 p.m., because I had to finish a shift at work. The night was thick and hot, the kind where the humidity clings to you like a wet blanket. The forecast had called for scattered storms, but by the time I got past Pleasanton, the clouds had only gathered in lazy patches, leaving the moon to hang full and swollen over the brushland. There's a strange stillness out there if you've ever driven it. Long stretches where the mesquite and prickly pear are the only things moving, and even they seem to hold their breath. I had the windows up, the AC wheezing on full blast in my old Honda Civic. I remember fiddling with the radio because it kept cutting in and out. Static Spanish stations, then static again. Eventually I gave up and plugged in my phone, let some classic rock keep me company. Everything was normal. Tiring, boring highway driving. Mile markers, the occasional set of headlights cresting the horizon, the endless hiss of tires on asphalt. I wasn't even thinking about anything in particular. Just zoning out, waiting for the green road signs to tick closer to home. That's when I saw her. At first, I thought she was just another stranded pedestrian. She was walking along the shoulder, head down, her long black hair spilling forward like a curtain. She was barefoot, in what looked like a white dress, loose and fluttering around her knees. The sight of her jolted me out of my daze. It was late. Close to midnight by then, and out there you don't see many people walking, let alone women alone. I slowed down automatically, eyes darting to see if she had a broken down car somewhere, maybe parked in the brush. But there was nothing, just her and the endless stretch of highway. As I passed, she lifted her head. Her face was pale in the moonlight, and though the details blurred in the quick glance, I swear she looked directly at me. Not the way someone looks at a car passing, but the way you lock eyes with a person across a table. I drove another quarter mile before guilt started nagging at me. What if she really was stranded? What if someone had dumped her out there? I pulled over onto the gravel shoulder, put on my hazards, and waited for her to catch up. My heart thudded in my chest as I watched in the mirror. She kept walking steadily, her arms hanging limp at her sides, her bare feet dark against the pale strip of gravel. When she reached my car, I leaned over and rolled down the passenger window. "Hey," I called. "Do you need help? Are you okay?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, hair shifting slightly in the humid breeze. Up close, the dress looked older, yellowed at the seams, like something out of a thrift store bin. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. "You can sit if you need a ride somewhere." She climbed in without a word. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Damp earth, like wet soil after rain. Not sweat, not perfume, just that heavy mineral smell of ground turned over by a shovel. She folded her hands in her lap, staring straight ahead. "Where are you headed?" I asked. Her lips moved. I thought I heard something, soft as breath, but it was too quiet. "Sorry, I didn't catch that." This time she turned her head slightly and I heard it clearer. She whispered one word. "Home." I swallowed. "Where's home? I can drop you." Before I could finish, she whispered again. This time it wasn't just a word. It was my mother's name. Not just the name, but the way she used to say it when she was scolding me as a kid. The exact cadence. The faint Tex-Mex accent curled around the vowels. My mom has been dead for 8 years. The air in the car turned heavy. I tried to glance at her without being obvious, but in the dim glow of the dash lights, her face looked wrong. Too smooth, too pale. Her eyes caught the greenish light and seemed almost gray, like storm water. I gripped the wheel tighter and forced a laugh, my voice trembling. "Funny coincidence. You know someone named Maria?" She didn't answer. The rest of the drive is a blur. I kept my eyes glued to the road, every muscle in my body tight, while she sat in silence. Once or twice I thought I heard her whispering again, too low to make out, like someone muttering in another room. After 10 minutes that felt like hours, I pulled off at the first lit gas station I saw. My plan was to stop, make up some excuse, and let her get out. But when I pulled into the lot and turned to her, the seat was empty. The door was still locked. The seatbelt was still buckled. But she wasn't there. I sat frozen, the smell of damp earth still hanging in the air. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I remember fumbling for my phone, wanting to call someone, anyone, but I couldn't think of who. Eventually, I drove on. I didn't stop again until I reached McAllen at nearly 3 in the morning. I told my sister about it the next day. She didn't laugh. She didn't tell me I was crazy. She just went quiet and said, "People around here talk about her. La Mujer de Blanco. They say if she rides with you, it means someone in your family is going to die." I wanted to argue, to dismiss it, but the words caught in my throat. Because when I checked my phone later, I had a missed call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a local area code, and the voicemail was nothing but static. That was 3 weeks ago. Last night I woke up to the smell of wet dirt in my bedroom, and when I glanced at the mirror across from my bed, I swear I saw a pale figure in white, standing just over my shoulder. I haven't told anyone else. I don't know what to do. I just keep driving, windows up, never slowing down when I see someone on the highway. But I can't shake the thought that she isn't finished with me yet. It was the night of August 12, 2021, around 11:40 p.m. I know the exact date and time because I still have the gas receipt from Alpine, Texas, where I stopped before the drive. I was heading west toward Marfa, alone in my old Chevy Silverado, with the bed of the truck loaded down with camping gear, a cooler of food, and the folding chair I always carried for stargazing. I had a couple of days off work and figured I'd kill them by camping out near the Davis Mountains, far enough from the city lights to get a sky full of stars. The night was clear and hot in that heavy desert way, with the cicadas loud even through the rolled-up windows and the faint smell of dry mesquite carried in every breath of wind. The road stretched straight and empty, lined with the low brush and barbed wire fencing that seemed to go on forever. I had the radio turned down low, just some static-ridden country station from Odessa that kept fading in and out. It was the kind of drive that makes you feel like you're the only person left in the world. About 20 miles outside Marfa, I saw the lights. Everyone in West Texas knows about the Marfa lights. People make pilgrimages to the official viewing area, set up cameras, drink beer, and hope for a glimpse. I wasn't really thinking about them, not until a faint, bluish glow shimmered above the desert scrub, off to the south of the highway. It wasn't headlights, too far from any road, and it wasn't a ranch house unless someone had strung up a balloon of neon gas over their land. The glow pulsed, faded, and then flared again in a different spot, closer this time, like it had jumped across the darkness. I slowed down without meaning to. My truck rattled on the asphalt, headlights catching only the broken yellow line ahead and the thorny brush to the sides. The light appeared again, brighter now, a perfect sphere that hung just above the ground, maybe 200 yards off the highway. It shifted, slid sideways like it was alive, then blinked out. My stomach dropped in that weird way it does when your body knows something's wrong before your mind catches up. The stories came to me then. Some people said the lights were reflections, or swamp gas, though there aren't swamps out there, or headlights bending across the desert. Others swore they were spirits, the restless dead of old Apache warriors or Spanish conquistadors. I'd laughed about it before, told my friends it was all tourist bait, but seeing that glow with my own eyes, it wasn't funny anymore. I don't know what possessed me to do it. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe boredom, maybe that old instinct that says if you don't chase it, you'll always wonder. But I turned off onto a dusty ranch road. The gravel crunched under my tires as I left the highway. The GPS on my dash flickered once, then froze, spinning that little arrow in circles. I tapped the screen, thinking it lost signal, but the whole thing locked up. My phone wasn't much better. No bars, no service. I figured that was normal. There were plenty of dead zones out there. I kept driving, following the dirt road as it snaked into the desert. The light appeared again, now dead ahead, hovering low over the ground. I swear it seemed to wait for me, holding steady until I caught sight of it before darting off into the distance. It was playful almost, but wrong, like a lure. Minutes passed. The road narrowed, twisted. My headlights cut across old cattle fences, patches of dry grass, and rusting farm equipment half swallowed by weeds. Every now and then the light appeared, always just far enough that I had to keep going. The GPS screen went completely black. I should have turned around. God knows I should have. But the deeper I drove, the quieter everything got. The cicadas stopped. Even the sound of gravel under the tires seemed muffled, like the world itself was holding its breath. My pulse thumped in my ears. I cracked the window, just to feel connected to something real, and the air that poured in was cold. Not cool, not refreshing. Cold, like winter in the middle of August. Then I saw the house. My headlights swept across it as I came around a bend, a long, low ranch house, roof sagging, windows dark. The kind of place that had been abandoned for decades. The porch was half collapsed, a rocking chair tipped sideways among the boards. No cars, no lights, just black, empty windows staring at me. I braked hard, dust rising in clouds around me. My hands were slick on the steering wheel. Behind me, the road stretched back into the dark. In front of me, the house waited, silent. That's when I noticed the tire tracks. Fresh ones pressed deep into the dust, leading straight up to where I'd stopped. They weren't mine. I could see the tread of my own all-terrains veering, off where I'd pulled in. These were different, thinner, newer, and they stopped right beside me. I killed the engine without thinking, plunging the world into silence. The glow was gone now, snuffed out like it had never been there. I sat in the dark, heart hammering, trying to tell myself I hadn't just followed some phantom lure into the middle of nowhere. That's when I heard it, a door creaking open, not from my truck, from the ranch house. I froze. Every hair on my body stood up. The sound was slow, deliberate wood groaning on rusted hinges. Then came the soft scrape of something dragging across the porch boards. I didn't wait to see more. My hands fumbled for the keys, twisting them hard. The engine roared back to life, headlights flaring across the dead yard. And in that split second, I saw movement in the nearest window. Not a shadow, not a trick of the glass, but a face. Pale. Watching me. I slammed the truck into reverse, tires spinning in the dust. The house vanished behind the haze, swallowed by the night. I didn't stop, didn't look back until my tires hit asphalt again and the yellow line reappeared under my beams. When I finally checked the clock, it was 2:17 a.m., more than 2 hours on, though the drive should have taken 20 minutes. My GPS was still dead, my phone was blank. The only proof I had of any of it was the layer of dust covering my truck and the faint marks of tire treads. Not mine, on the fenders, like something had followed close behind. I made it to Marfa by sunrise, checked into the first cheap motel I found, and sat under the humming neon light of the bathroom for the rest of the day. I don't know what I followed that night. I don't know how I ended up at that ranch house or whose tracks were beside mine in the dirt. And I don't know what was waiting inside. But I'll tell you this, if you ever see the lights out on Marfa Road, don't follow them. They don't lead anywhere you want to go. It was September 14th, 2019. I remember the date because it was the day after my sister's wedding in Dallas, and my family and I were driving back home to Colorado. We had left later than we should have, around 7:30 p.m., and by the time we reached the panhandle of Texas, it was past midnight. My wife Sarah was asleep in the passenger seat, and my son Jacob, who was 6 at the time, was curled up under a blanket in the back seat with his headphones on. I was running on caffeine and stubbornness, trying to push through the night and shave a few hours off the trip. The road was nearly empty, just long, straight stretches of highway under a dark sky with no moon. Out there, between Amarillo and the Oklahoma border, the landscape feels endless. Flat plains broken up only by the occasional billboard or cluster of gas station lights glowing faintly on the horizon. My eyes were starting to burn from staring at the reflective paint on the road for so long, and when I saw the blue rest area 2 miles sign, I decided to pull off. I figured I'd stretch my legs, splash some water on my face, and maybe grab a snack from a vending machine before continuing. We pulled into the rest stop around 12:20 a.m. It was one of those isolated highway rest areas, just a large loop of pavement with a row of dim streetlights, a small concrete building with bathrooms, and a covered area with vending machines. There were a couple of semi-trucks parked at the far end, their cabs dark, engines off. Otherwise, the place looked empty. I parked near the vending machines and shut off the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy after hours of highway noise. Sarah stirred a little but stayed asleep, her head leaned against the window. I unbuckled and was about to step out when I heard Jacob's small voice from the back seat. "Dad," he said quietly. "Why is that man looking at us?" The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, made my stomach clench. I froze with my hand on the door handle. Slowly, I turned to look where he was staring. By the vending machines, maybe 20 feet away, was a figure. At first, I thought it was just a man standing there in the shadows, but as my eyes adjusted, I realized something was wrong. He was tall, unnaturally tall, I'd say at least 7 feet. He wasn't moving, not even shifting his weight, just standing perfectly still. The light from the vending machines was weak, but it should have been enough to make out details. Clothes, a face, something. Instead, he looked like a shadow. Not a man in dark clothing, but an outline of blackness, darker than the night around. Him, with no features at all. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, heart hammering in my chest. My first thought was that my eyes were playing tricks on me, that I was exhausted and seeing shapes where there weren't any. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, and looked again. He was still there, still facing us, still featureless. "Dad?" Jacob whispered again, his voice wavering now. "He's staring." I forced myself to sound calm. "It's nothing, buddy. Just stay in the car." My voice came out tighter than I wanted. I debated whether to turn the engine back on and drive away, but my body felt locked in place. Some part of me told myself I was being ridiculous, that it was probably just a guy in a hoodie, that the lighting was bad, that I was overtired. Another part of me, the deeper animal part, screamed that something was wrong, that we should not be here. I finally forced myself to move. I opened the door, stepped out, and stood up, trying to look casual, like I wasn't rattled. The air was cool and dry, carrying the faint smell of dust and diesel from the parked trucks. Gravel crunched under my shoes as I straightened my back and looked directly at the figure. There was nothing, just a vending machine humming softly and casting pale light. The space where I had seen him was empty. I let out a shaky laugh and shook my head. "Just tired," I muttered to myself. "I'm seeing things." I turned back to the car. Jacob was sitting up now, peering out the window with wide eyes. "Where'd he go?" he asked. "There wasn't anyone there, buddy," I told him gently. "You must have dreamed it. Let's get some snacks, huh?" I walked over to the vending machines, trying to convince myself everything was fine. My footsteps echoed strangely in the stillness. I dug a few bills out of my pocket and fed them into the machine. As I punched in a number for a bag of chips, I couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. It pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating even though the lot was empty. The machine clunked and dropped the bag. I bent to grab it, and as I stood back up, my eyes flicked toward the restroom building. The doorway was dark, but for a split second I thought I saw something tall and black slipping just out of sight. My skin prickled. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. I backed away slowly, never turning my back fully on the building until I was at the car. I climbed in, locked the doors, and started the engine. Sarah stirred awake as the car rumbled. "What's wrong?" she mumbled, still half asleep. "Nothing," I said too quickly. "Just getting back on the road." As we pulled out of the rest stop, Jacob whispered from the back seat, "He's still there." I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't want to know. I just pressed harder on the gas and merged back onto the highway. For the next 2 hours, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror. Every time I expected to see headlights behind me, or worse, that tall black figure standing on the shoulder of the road. But the highway stayed empty, mile after mile of dark asphalt stretching into nothing. We made it home the next afternoon, and I didn't say a word to Sarah about what I'd seen. I told myself it was exhaustion, a trick of the light, nothing more. But Jacob never forgot. For weeks afterward, he would wake up crying, saying the tall man was standing in the corner of his room, watching him. Sarah brushed it off as nightmares, but I could see in Jacob's face that he wasn't making it up. It's been years now, but sometimes I still dream about that rest stop. In the dream, I'm standing alone by the vending machines, and the hum of the machine is the only sound. Then I feel the weight of eyes on me, and when I turn, he's there. Towering, faceless, a shadow cut out of the night. He doesn't move. He doesn't speak. He just watches. And no matter how many times I wake up, the feeling stays with me, that somewhere out there on some empty stretch of highway, he's still waiting. It was the night of March 14th, 2019, a Thursday. I remember that clearly because I'd been in Austin for work all week, and I had promised my sister I'd make it home to Denton in time for her birthday the next morning. It was just after 10 p.m. when I finally got on the road. A little later than I wanted, but I figured I could make the 3.5-hour drive if I stayed on I-35 and didn't stop for too long. The sky had that pale, washed-out look it gets after a warm Texas rain. The kind where the air still smells damp and metallic like wet asphalt and diesel. The highway was slick under the yellow glow of the lamps, and the traffic had thinned down to scattered pockets. Late commuters, long-haul trucks, and the occasional college kid speeding north out of Austin. I was in my little silver Camry, humming along just over the speed limit, coffee in the cup holder, music low enough that I could hear the tires against the wet road. I was tired, but not the kind of tired where your eyelids droop. More like that restless fatigue where your body is worn but your mind keeps turning. I first noticed the truck around Georgetown. Black cab, black trailer, no logos, no writing, just this hulking dark shape sliding up behind me. At first I thought nothing of it. Semis come and go all the time on that stretch. But this one didn't pass. It tucked in close behind me, so close I could see the glare of its headlights bouncing across my back seat, too close for comfort. I eased into the right lane, expecting it to roar past, but it slid right in behind me again, almost on my bumper. I frowned, tapped my brakes once, not enough to slow, just enough to flash the lights. The truck answered with a deafening blast of its horn, long, low, angry. My whole chest rattled with it. "All right," I muttered, half to myself, half to whatever idiot was driving, and moved over again. Same thing. I couldn't see the driver through the tinted windshield, just the hulking shape of the cab and the white flood of its lights washing over my car. This went on for miles. By the time I hit Temple, my nerves were stretched taut. Every time I switched lanes, the truck followed. If I slowed, it slowed. If I sped up, it matched me exactly. Once I tried pulling onto the shoulder for a second, thinking maybe it would finally surge past, but it braked hard and stayed glued behind, e-horn screaming like some kind of warning. I finally pulled off at a Valero just past Troy, figuring if nothing else I'd wait him out. The lot was empty, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, moths tapping against the glass windows of the little convenience store. I sat there for a second, hands clenched tight around the wheel, heart thudding. The truck never pulled in. I craned, my neck searching the dark highway beyond the gas station, but it was gone. No taillights, no fading rumble of an engine, just the quiet whine of the lamps and the smell of gasoline on the wet pavement. I got out, legs shaky, and went inside. The place was empty except for a middle-aged cashier stocking cigarettes behind the counter. I grabbed a bottle of water and made some small talk, trying to sound normal, but finally I blurted it out. "Hey, did you see that truck pull in? Black semi, no logos. Rode me all the way from Georgetown." The guy frowned, set the carton down. "Truck?" "Yeah," I said. "It was right behind me, horn blaring. I thought for sure it followed me off the exit." He shook his head slowly. "Honey, I've been standing here the last half hour. You're the first car I've seen since 9:30. I laughed, a nervous little bark. "No, I mean it was right on me, you must have heard it." The horn shook my whole car. He gave me this look, half confused, half something else I didn't like. "Ain't no trucks gone by here in hours. Road's been dead quiet." I felt my skin crawl. "Do you have cameras?" I asked. He nodded, hesitated, then ducked into the back. A minute later, he came out with this little monitor under his arm, one of those black and white security feeds. He rewound it, fast-forwarded, then played it back for me. The screen showed the empty lot, the faint shimmer of rain still on the pavement. Then, clear as day, my Camry pulled in. Headlights, brake lights, me getting out and walking inside. Nothing else, no truck, not even the faintest pair of headlights behind me. I stood there staring at the grainy footage, my throat so dry I could hardly swallow. The cashier said nothing, just gave me this wary side-eye like maybe I was some kind of problem he didn't want in his store. I bought the water, walked back out into the damp night, and sat in my car with the engine off, the only sound the tick-tick of cooling metal. I must have sat there 20 minutes staring at the empty highway. When I finally pulled back onto I-35, the road stretched ahead in silence. No trucks in sight. But every few miles, when the shadows between the streetlights deepened, I swore I could feel headlights burning against my back again. I made it home around 2 a.m., shaking so bad I nearly dropped my keys trying to get inside. My sister asked why I looked pale at breakfast the next morning, and I just said I was tired. I've driven that stretch dozens of times since. I've never seen that black truck again. But sometimes, late at night, when the road is slick and empty, I still catch myself checking the mirror, half expecting those blinding headlights to bloom behind me. And I know in my gut that if they ever do, I won't be pulling into a gas station this time, because I'm not sure I'd be the one getting out. I've been driving trucks for 15 years now, mostly cross-state loads, sometimes interstate if the money's worth it. My route has taken me through every kind of back road, desert stretch, and crowded interstate you can imagine. But the trip I'm about to tell you about still has me questioning my own memory, and I'm writing this out because it's eating at me, the way some things never leave you even after months pass. I can't shake what happened that night on Highway 83 near the Mexican border. It was October of last year, late in the month, one of those stretches where I'd been running back-to-back deliveries with barely enough time to shower and eat before climbing back into the cab. I picked up a load of aluminum parts in Laredo, Texas, meant for a warehouse in Carrizo Springs. Small job, but I had a couple of days before my bigger run toward Houston, so I took it. The pay wasn't great, but I told myself it was better than sitting around in a motel room. The day itself had been ordinary. Dry heat, cloudless skies, and the kind of wind that feels like it's blowing straight out of an oven. I parked at A small truck stop outside of town around 6:30 p.m. to fuel up and grab some coffee before the night drive. The sun had dipped low, throwing long shadows across the asphalt, and the neon open sign above the convenience store flickered on and off like it was tired. Inside, I grabbed a black coffee and a microwaved burrito that tasted like cardboard. The cashier, a young guy with acne scars and a name tag that said Luis, gave me a quick smile and said, "Careful out there tonight, man. Border Patrol's been real busy. Lot of stops." I nodded, not thinking much of it. Highway 83 runs right along the border, and checkpoints aren't unusual. I was more focused on the long drive ahead. By 7:15, I was back in the cab, thermos filled, logbook updated, and the radio humming low. I started the rig and pulled out onto 83 heading north. The road stretched endlessly, just 2 lanes of cracked asphalt fading into the horizon. On either side, the land was flat and empty, mesquite and cactus scattered across dry dirt. The air cooled fast after sunset, and by the time full darkness fell, the desert had taken on that strange, quiet stillness. That's when the first thing happened. I had my CB radio turned off. I always do when I'm driving solo unless I need to catch chatter about traffic or way stations. But around 9 p.m., just as I was passing a faded green sign for Katerina, the radio crackled to life. Not static, not a short burst like interference, but clear words spoken in a low voice. "Donde estás?" The voice was male, deep, maybe, in his 40s or 50s, speaking Spanish with a northern Mexican accent. I froze, glancing at the unit. The switch was flipped down. The radio was off. I told myself it was some bleed over from a nearby trucker's rig, maybe a busted switch. That happens, sometimes. Still, my fingers were trembling when I reached out and toggled the knob, making sure it was firmly in the off position. The light on the unit stayed dark. But 10 minutes later, it came again. This time, it wasn't Spanish. "Don't stop. Don't look back." I damn near dropped my coffee. The voice was familiar. Too familiar. My older brother, Daniel. He's been dead for 6 years. The sound of his voice hit me like a punch in the chest. Same tone, same rhythm. Not just similar, identical. I gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. "No," I muttered to myself, shaking my head. No, I'm just tired. I'm hearing things." But the CB stayed dark. No lights, no hum of power. Just his voice, slipping through the silence of the cab like he was sitting in the passenger seat. Didn't turn the radio back on. I just kept driving. The desert outside my headlights seemed to press closer, darker than usual. The kind of black where you half expect something to be standing just beyond the beam. I tried to focus on the road, the dashed white line ticking by like a metronome, but my mind kept circling back to what I'd heard. At 9:40, I spotted a Border Patrol SUV parked on the shoulder up ahead, lights flashing. Relief washed over me. Maybe I could stop, stretch, ask if they'd heard anything strange on their comms. As I slowed, I realized the SUV was empty. Driver's side door open, engine running, but no one inside. I pulled past it, not daring to stop. By the time I hit Asherton, my nerves were shredded. The CB stayed quiet, but I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. Not just the usual paranoia of night driving, this was heavier, like eyes pressed against the back of my skull. And then, right as I was clearing the town, headlights appeared in my mirrors. A beat-up Chevy pickup tailgating close. Too close. I tapped the brakes lightly, hoping they'd back off. They didn't. Instead, the pickup swerved to the left, pulled alongside me for a few seconds, then dropped back again. I caught a glimpse of the driver, a man, maybe late 30s, with a shaved head. His face was expressionless, but his lips were moving like he was talking into a CB mic. I couldn't hear him, but my dead brother's voice came through my speaker again, clear as day. "Don't stop. Don't look back." This time it was louder, distorted, like the words were straining against the walls of the cab itself. I lost it. I slammed the accelerator, the engine roaring as the rig picked up speed. The pickup stayed close behind for a few miles, then without warning, its headlights winked out. I glanced in the mirror. Nothing. No taillights, no dust trail. Just empty highway stretching behind me. I didn't see another car the rest of the way. By the time I rolled into Carrizo Springs, it was after midnight. I parked at the delivery yard and sat there for a long time, hands trembling against the wheel, listening to the silence. I couldn't bring myself to turn on the CB. When I finally climbed down and handed off the paperwork to the night clerk, he gave me a weird look. "You all right, man? You look like you've seen a ghost." I didn't answer. What the hell could I have said? The load got delivered. I made it to Houston the next day, and on the surface, everything went back to normal. But the memory hasn't left me. I keep hearing that voice in my head. Not just when I drive 83, not just in Texas. Sometimes at night when I'm parked at a rest stop 1,000 miles away, I'll wake up and the CB will be crackling even though it's off. Always the same words. Don't stop. Don't look back. And the worst part is I've started listening. I don't stop anymore on dark stretches of road. I don't check my mirrors if I hear something behind me. Because deep down, I think Daniel's right. Something's out there on that highway. And if I ever stop, if I ever dare to look back, I don't think I'll come home. It was July 18th, 2019, a Thursday afternoon somewhere on I-10 between Van Horn and Fort Stockton. My wife Rachel and I had been on the road for hours, heading west toward El Paso with the air conditioning blasting. The thermometer on the dashboard read 102 degrees, and the landscape outside was a blur of desert scrub and hard, endless sky. The kind of Texas heat that presses down on you, dry but suffocating, making every mile feel like 3. We'd filled up on gas in Van Horn and figured we could make it to Fort Stockton without another stop. It was around 3:40 p.m. when the car stuttered, a weird hitch in the engine, like it couldn't catch its breath. I glanced at Rachel and she gave me the same look I was already thinking, please not out here. I eased off the gas and the engine coughed once more before dying completely. The steering wheel went stiff in my hands, and the silence that followed was absolute. No hum of the AC, no music, just the low whine of tires slowing on the asphalt. We rolled onto the shoulder, dust kicking up around us, and came to a stop beside a stretch of empty highway. I turned the key a few times, but all I got was a hollow click. Dead. Rachel pulled her phone out immediately, but her face fell. No service. I checked mine. Same thing. Nothing but a flat line at the top of the screen. We both sat for a moment, listening to the ticking sound of the engine cooling down. The heat pressed in immediately, the kind that makes your clothes stick to you in seconds. I was about to suggest we get out and check under the hood when I noticed something strange. My breath fogged up the windshield. I frowned and leaned closer. It wasn't just the windshield. When I exhaled, I could see my breath hanging in front of me. I rubbed at the window, half convinced it was just heat mirage messing with me, but my hand felt cold against the glass. Rachel's eyes went wide. "Do you feel that?" she asked. The temperature inside the car had dropped so suddenly it made the hairs on my arms rise. I turned off the ignition completely and opened the door. The heat should have slammed me in the face. Instead, a wave of frigid air rushed past me, carrying that metallic bite of winter air that shouldn't exist in the middle of July. When I stepped out onto the shoulder, I saw it. The asphalt had gone pale. A thin, glassy sheen stretched across the blacktop, and with each step I heard the unmistakable crunch of frost under my boots. Rachel climbed out, hugging herself. "This isn't possible," she whispered. I didn't answer because the desert, stretching flat and empty as far as I could see, had gone unnaturally still. No buzz of cicadas, no hot wind rattling the scrub. Just silence, sharp and cold, like the world had been muted. Then came the footsteps. At first I thought it was just us, the sound of our shoes crunching against the frost. But when we stopped moving, it didn't stop. The rhythm continued, measured and deliberate, coming from just behind us on the road. Rachel's hand tightened on my arm. "There's someone out here." I spun, expecting to see a person walking up the shoulder, maybe another stranded driver. But the highway behind us was empty. Just frozen asphalt stretching back into the desert heat shimmer. But the footsteps didn't stop. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Slow, even, closing the distance. I backed Rachel toward the car, every instinct screaming that something was wrong, deeply wrong. My own breath came out in thick, visible plumes. I grabbed the handle and yanked, but the lock had jammed. Rachel beat on her side too, cursing under her breath, but the doors stayed shut, as if the car no longer wanted us in. The footsteps stopped about 10 feet away. I swear to God I felt it. The presence of something standing there, watching us. I couldn't see it, couldn't hear breathing, but the air between us was heavy and wrong. My chest tightened, and for the first time in years, I felt the pure panic of a child who knows something is standing in their dark room. Rachel whispered, "Do you see it?" I shook my head, but I didn't tell her the truth. I could see the faintest impression in the frost, depressions appearing in the thin ice like weight pressing down, footprints forming one after another, leading straight toward us. That was when the sound started. A low, dragging inhale, like lungs filling with air they hadn't drawn in a very long time. Rachel screamed. I grabbed her arm and bolted. Not toward the car. Away from it. Toward the desert scrub. The frozen stretch of I-10 fell away behind us as we stumbled into heat again. The cold ended as abruptly as it had begun. One step we were running across frost, our breaths fogging, the air. The next step we were back in blistering desert heat, sweat stinging my eyes. We didn't stop until we collapsed behind a cluster of mesquite. My chest heaved, my mouth felt dry as sand, but I could still feel it. That cold pulling at the edges of me. The highway was silent. The car sat where we'd left it, frost still clinging to the shoulder. I couldn't see footprints anymore, but I knew they were there. We waited until nearly sunset before another car finally came along, a beat-up pickup with a rancher who pulled over and gave us a lift. When I pointed back at where our car had been, the frost was gone. The blacktop shimmered under the heat again as if nothing had ever happened. But I remember the look on the rancher's face when we told him where it happened. He went pale, shaking his head. "Between Van Horn and Fort Stockton?" he asked. "You shouldn't stop there, not ever. Folks don't talk about it, but things walk that stretch. Things that ain't right." We never got the car back. By the time a tow truck went out the next morning, it was gone. No sign it had ever been there. Rachel and I don't talk about it much anymore, but every now and then, when the AC in our house kicks on too hard in the middle of the summer, and I see my breath mist in the living room for just a second, I remember the crunch of those footsteps on the frozen asphalt. And I know, whatever was on that highway, it wasn't done following us. It was the night of September 14th, 2021, just past midnight. I was driving alone on US Highway 287, heading north through Texas. The sky was moonless, the kind of black that swallows the stars when the humidity is high, and the air carried that dry late summer heat that lingers even at night. I had the windows down halfway to keep myself awake, and the radio was little more than static between two distant stations. I'd been on the road for hours already, somewhere between Wichita Falls and Amarillo, with the fuel gauge steadily dipping toward empty. I had another 60 miles before the next town, and I remember doing the math in my head. I wasn't going to make it without filling up. That's when I saw it. Out of the dark, maybe a mile ahead, a glow began to bloom. Neon, bright colors that seemed too saturated for the night. Reds, blues, greens, almost shimmering like they were floating in heat waves. It wasn't a billboard. I could see the outlines of the building as I got closer. A gas station. Relief hit me so suddenly that I actually laughed out loud in the car. I pulled in, gravel crunching under my tires, the lights buzzing overhead with that faint electric hum. The place looked like something from another decade, maybe the 70s or 80s. The paint on the pumps was chipped, the numbers on the old analog, dials worn down, but everything was spotless. Too spotless. There was no trash on the ground, no bugs around the lights, not even a smudge on the glass of the little shop. The sign above the awning simply read gas in blocky red letters, with no brand logo, no price listed. The neon tubes cast this strange shifting glow across the parking lot. I cut the engine, stepped out, and felt the air was strangely still. No crickets, no distant engines on the highway, just silence under the electrical buzz. I slid my card into the reader, but it spat it back out immediately. I tried again. Same thing. That's when the door to the shop clicked open, and a man stepped out. At least I think it was a man. He was tall and very thin, wearing a pale blue attendant's shirt tucked into slacks that were too loose at the waist. His skin looked washed out under the neon, and his hair, what little of it remained, was combed flat against his scalp. But what struck me most was his eyes. He didn't blink. Not once, just stared directly at me, his mouth set in a straight line like he was waiting. Pump not taking cards? I asked, lifting the rejected one in the air. My voice sounded too loud in the stillness. He didn't answer. He turned, slowly, and walked back inside. Something about the way he moved, deliberate, mechanical, like each step was chosen, sent a shiver up my spine. I stood there for a moment, debating whether to just get back in the car and risk running out of gas, but the needle on the gauge was nearly touching E. I followed him in. The interior was lit by the same harsh neon, glow bleeding through the glass. The aisles were neatly stocked, though everything looked old-fashioned. Soda bottles with designs I hadn't seen in years, candy bars in outdated wrappers, dusty magazines stacked in perfect rows. Behind the counter, the man stood, motionless, waiting. He pointed slowly at a handwritten sign taped to the register. Cash only. I had about $30 in my wallet. I handed him a 20, and without a word, he placed a set of keys on the counter. Real keys, heavy and metallic, attached to a plastic tag with Pump 2 written in marker. I took them, muttered thanks, and went back outside. The lock on the pump was stiff, like it hadn't been opened in decades, but the nozzle clicked on and fuel began to flow. The smell of gasoline filled the air, oddly sharp, almost too strong. I glanced back toward the window. The man was still standing, there perfectly still watching me, not blinking. When the tank was full, I locked the pump, returned the keys, and he handed me exact change back, coins stacked neatly in my palm. His hands were cold, ice cold. I pocketed the money and forced a smile. "Have a good night," I said, and turned quickly for the door. He didn't respond. I drove off with the tires spitting gravel, relieved to be back on the highway. The neon glow receded in my rearview mirror until it vanished into the blackness. I checked my phone for directions, and that's when I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The GPS showed nothing but empty highway behind me. No towns, no buildings, no gas stations for at least 60 miles in either direction. I zoomed in closer, thinking maybe it was a glitch. Nothing. Just an uninterrupted stretch of road. I told myself I must have missed it on the map, that maybe it was some tiny independent station that didn't show up. But when I tried to remember, the name on the receipt or the logo on the pumps, there wasn't anything. There had been no receipt, no logo. Just that single word, gas. By the time I reached Amarillo, I'd convinced myself it was exhaustion playing tricks on me. I checked into a motel, lay down, and was out cold in minutes. The next morning, though, when I went to grab a bottle of water from my car, I noticed something on the passenger seat. The coins. The exact change he had given me, stacked neatly, perfectly balanced in a little pile. I know I put them in my pocket, I know I did. That was 3 years ago. I still drive 287 sometimes, but I've never seen that glow again. A few weeks back, though, I overheard 2 truckers talking in a diner outside Wichita Falls. One of them swore he stopped at a station out there past midnight, glowing neon, real old-fashioned. Said the guy behind the counter never blinked. The other one just shook his head and muttered, "Don't stop at that place, don't ever stop." And I can't shake the feeling that next time I drive that stretch, I won't just see it from the highway. I'll be expected to stop again. It was late October, the kind of night where the air carries that sharp edge hinting winter is around the corner. My friend Chris and I were driving west on I-20, heading back toward Abilene after spending the weekend in Dallas. It was a Sunday night around 11:30, and the highway was almost empty except for the occasional set of headlights appearing in the rear view, then disappearing into the distance. The dashboard clock glowed a faint green and the radio played low, some old country station fuzzing in and out depending on where we were on the road. We had been talking about nothing in particular, just killing time, when Chris mentioned he was starving. It had been hours since we'd eaten and the gas station snacks weren't cutting it anymore. I wasn't as hungry, but I agreed we should find a place to stop before everything closed for the night. Small towns flickered by in the distance with dim streetlights and the occasional neon sign, but most places looked shut down. Just past Clyde, maybe 15 minutes east of Abilene, we spotted a small roadside diner. I remember it vividly because it looked like something from a different decade. A squat, single-story building with big front windows and a glowing red neon sign that simply read, Diner. The parking lot was gravel, and there were only 2 other cars parked there, both older sedans, the kind you don't see much anymore. The place looked old but kept up, like somebody cared enough to repaint the trim every few years. The smell of frying oil and coffee hit us as soon as we stepped out of the car. Inside it was warm and smelled of bacon grease and cigarettes, though no one was actually smoking. The booths were upholstered in cracked red vinyl, and the walls were decorated with faded posters of Texas landmarks. A jukebox sat against the far wall, humming faintly like it was still drawing power, though no one touched it. There was a waitress, maybe in her 30s, with dark hair pulled back into a bun. She wore a pale blue uniform with a white apron that looked freshly pressed. She didn't say a word when we walked in, just gave us a polite nod and gestured toward a booth by the window. Chris whispered something like, "Guess she's not the chatty type," and we both laughed. Menus were already on the table. The selection was simple: burgers, fried chicken, grilled cheese, a handful of breakfast items. Chris ordered a patty melt, and I asked for pancakes with eggs. The waitress didn't write anything down. She just nodded once, took the menus, and walked away. I remember the food being surprisingly good, hot, greasy in that comforting way. Exactly what you want when you've been on the road all night. Chris wolfed his down and said it reminded him of the diners his dad used to take him to when he was a kid. I agreed, it had that same old-fashioned feel. The strange part, though, was how quiet everything was. The 2 other customers sat across the room, older men in work clothes, but they barely moved or spoke. They just sat hunched over their plates, eating slowly, staring down as if they were trying not to notice us. The waitress refilled our water, once but still never spoke. Not a hello, not a can I get you anything else? Just a nod, silent as the grave. By the time we finished eating, I was uneasy in a way I couldn't explain. There wasn't anything threatening about it, just off. Chris must have felt it too because he suggested we pay and get going instead of hanging around for pie like he'd wanted earlier. When the check came, it was handwritten on one of those green pads, the kind you almost never see anymore. No, total at the bottom, just the itemized list with prices. Chris figured the math, left cash on the table with a decent tip, and we walked out into the night. The air outside was cooler, and for a moment I felt relief just being out of that building. The drive back into Abilene was quiet. Chris made a couple of jokes about the mute waitress but didn't press it. By the time we got home, it was, late enough that we both just crashed. I didn't think much about it again until a few weeks later. We were driving the same route, heading east this time. Chris suggested we stop by that diner again since the food had been so good. We both tried to remember exactly where it was, somewhere between Clyde and Abilene. Except when we passed through, we couldn't find it. We thought maybe we missed it, so on the way back west that night, we paid closer attention. Sure enough, we found the spot. Only, there was no diner. There was a foundation of charred cement blocks and the skeletal remains of a building that had clearly burned down years ago. The gravel lot was overgrown with weeds. The sign out front, the red neon one that had glowed so clearly in the night, was nothing more than a rusted metal frame leaning sideways in the dirt. Chris pulled over without either of us saying a word. We sat there in silence, staring at the ruins. The air was dead still, not a single car passing on the highway. I remember stepping out and hearing the crunch of gravel under my shoes. Up close, it was obvious this place hadn't served food in a long time. The windows were shattered, the roof collapsed inward, and there was no smell of grease or coffee, just old ash and dust. Chris swore up and down we'd eaten there, that we'd left cash on the table for food that was steaming hot less than a month before. I swore the same. We stood there for a while, not sure what to say. Finally, Chris muttered, "We're not telling anyone about this. They'll think we're crazy," I agreed. But I can't stop thinking about it. I can still taste those pancakes, still picture the way the waitress never spoke, the way the two men ate without looking up. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night with the smell of bacon grease in my nose, so strong I'd swear someone was cooking in my kitchen. And the worst part? A few days ago, I found the receipt from that night crumpled in the glove box of my car. The same green paper, the same handwriting. Except the ink has faded so badly it's almost illegible, like it had been sitting there for decades instead of weeks. Now I keep wondering, if the diner burned down years ago, where exactly did we eat? And why do I have the receipt to prove it? On June 14, 2019, I was driving east on Route 66, cutting through the flatlands of Texas somewhere near Shamrock. It was just after 9 at night, and the air was still heavy from a storm that had blown through earlier. The pavement shone, dark with leftover moisture, and every so often my headlights would catch the glint of water pooled in cracks on the shoulder. The sky was moonless, layered with thick, low clouds that made the world outside my windshield seem smaller, pressed in like the night had weight. It smelled like wet dirt and distant oil fields, something you only notice on those stretches of highway where civilization feels like an afterthought. I was headed back from a job in Amarillo, tired and restless, but glad to be on a road that, for all its reputation, still felt familiar to me. I've taken Route 66 dozens of times, always chasing the shortcut between small towns. I had the radio on low, not really listening. Some AM station out of Oklahoma was fading in and out, playing old country that kept dissolving into fuzz. I leaned forward against the wheel, humming along with a song I half remembered from my dad's truck rides as a kid. The dash clock ticked toward 9:27 when it happened. The static swallowed the song completely. Not just interference, not a gradual fade. It was like someone had yanked the cord out. 1 second there was twangy guitar, the next it was pure white noise. My first thought was that I'd gone out of range of the station, which made sense this far out. I reached to twist the dial, but before I could, the static shifted. It wasn't random anymore. It pulsed. The hiss broke into patterns, shapes that almost had rhythm. And then I heard it. A voice formed inside the noise, faint but deliberate. It wasn't singing. It wasn't a DJ. It was low and blunt, like someone speaking through a broken phone line. 3 words, stretched thin, but I swear to God I heard them clear. "Don't stop driving." My knuckles tightened on the wheel. For a second I thought I'd misheard, that it was some weird fragment of a commercial breaking through the static. I even laughed under my breath, more to calm myself than because it was funny. But the voice repeated, slower this time. "Don't stop." The last word fizzled into a shriek of feedback that made me wince. I reached out and twisted the radio knob hard, trying to change stations, but every frequency was the same. Just that wall of static. My thumb hovered over the power switch, but some part of me couldn't bring myself to turn it off. I just sat there, my ears straining against the sound, the hairs rising along my arms. That was when a shape darted across the road. It was so sudden I barely had time to react. Something pale, leaping out of the ditch and into my headlights. I slammed. The brakes, the tires skidding against wet asphalt. The seatbelt cut into my shoulder as my chest slammed forward. My headlights caught the body of a deer in midair, its muscles coiled and legs outstretched like it had been launched. For one heartbeat, I was certain I'd hit it, but it cleared my hood by inches, vanishing into the other side of the dark, with a crash of brush. I sat there in the middle of the empty road, chest heaving, my car angled crooked on the slick pavement. The radio still hissed. And then, like it was waiting for me to notice, the voice returned, quieter now. Don't stop. I didn't think. I jammed the shifter back into drive and floored the accelerator. My tires fishtailed as the car surged forward, engine growling. I didn't look in the mirrors. I didn't want to. Every instinct in me screamed to keep moving, like if I stopped even for a second, something worse than a deer was waiting in the dark. For the next 5 miles, the static followed me, rising and falling, never breaking back into music. My palms were slick on the wheel. My eyes scanned the shoulder relentlessly, half expecting another animal, half expecting something else entirely. The night outside the beams of my headlights looked thick, almost textured, as if it was holding its breath. I kept telling myself it was just coincidence that the radio had gone weird and the deer had been bad luck. But another part of me, the part that listened too closely, couldn't shake the thought that if I had stopped right then, I wouldn't be here to write this. I would have been standing in the dark on the side of Route 66 alone with the static. When I finally rolled into Shamrock, I pulled into the first gas station I saw under the buzzing canopy lights. My hands were still trembling as I turned, the key off. The radio cut to silence, clean and final, like it had never been broken at all. I sat there for a long time, watching the empty pumps, trying to slow my breathing. A trucker passed me, gave me a nod, and went inside. I wanted to ask him if he'd ever heard it too, but the words died in my throat. I didn't want to know his answer. I've driven that same stretch of highway twice since then, always during the day, always with my radio off. Each time I pass that mile marker, I feel the same cold knot tighten in my chest. The thing that scares me most isn't that I heard a voice in the static. It's the thought that maybe the voice wasn't warning me. Maybe it was testing me, waiting for the moment I didn't listen. And maybe the next driver who hears it won't be as lucky as I was. It was just after 2 a.m. on a Sunday morning in late March when I pulled into the rest stop outside Tyler, Texas. The night was still, the kind of cool spring air that carries a dampness from the pines, and I remember thinking how grateful I was for the break. I had been driving since Houston, headed toward Dallas after visiting an old college buddy, and the monotonous stretch of highway was starting to blur together. My eyelids felt heavy, and my windshield had gathered a film of bugs and dust that made the glare from oncoming headlights smear like streaks of silver. When I saw the blue sign for a rest area, I took the exit without hesitation. The place was almost deserted. One 18-wheeler was idling at the far end of the lot, its engine thumping in a slow rhythm. The rest stop itself was lit by a handful of tall yellow sodium lights, their glow giving the concrete a sickly hue. A row of vending machines hummed near the bathrooms, and beyond them was only the tree line, thick with black pine silhouettes. My tires crunched over gravel as I pulled into a spot directly beneath one of the lamps. I got out, stretched my legs, and popped open the trunk to grab a rag and some windshield fluid I kept in a plastic jug. I remember the smell of pine mixed with faint diesel exhaust from the trucker's rig. My windshield was grimy enough that I figured I might as well clean it now before getting back on the road. I poured some of the fluid, wiped in wide arcs, and watched as the streaks cleared to reveal a clean reflection of the lot lights above me. For a second, I leaned against the hood, enjoying the silence. That was when I noticed how empty it was. The 18-wheeler's driver never stepped out. The highway in the distance had occasional flashes of headlights, but otherwise it was just me and the lot. I thought about how vulnerable it felt, being in the middle of nowhere in the dead of night with nothing but trees around. I shook it off and locked the car before heading into the bathroom. Inside, the tiled floor was damp and smelled faintly of bleach, like it had been cleaned earlier in the evening. My footsteps echoed sharply as I walked toward the urinals. I washed my hands afterward, splashing the cold water over my face to wake myself up, and for a moment I stared into the mirror. My reflection looked strange under the fluorescent bulbs, pale and tired with shadows under my eyes. There was no sound but the buzzing of the lights. When I stepped back out into the night air, I instantly felt that something had shifted. It's hard to explain. Nothing had changed, not visibly. The lot was the same, the truck still idling, the trees still looming. But I felt watched. The hairs on my arms rose, and I found myself scanning the darkness between the pines, half expecting someone to be standing there. I walked quickly back to my car, forcing myself not to look behind me. The thought of someone following a step behind me was so vivid that I almost broke into a run. When I reached my car, I yanked the door open, slid into the driver's seat, and only then allowed myself to exhale. That's when I saw it. Across the inside of my windshield, smeared in streaks and prints, were bloody handprints. Not big ones. Small. Child-sized. They were all over the glass, some dragging downward as though little hands had pressed and slid against the surface. My stomach dropped. I sat frozen, staring at them. The blood looked fresh, wet enough that it hadn't yet dried completely. I could see the streak marks glistening under the lot lights. My rag and jug of fluid were still on the hood where I had left them, and I realized with horror that there had been nothing on the glass when I finished wiping it minutes ago. My first thought was that it had to be a prank. Someone messing with me while I was inside. But how? I had locked the doors and there was no one else in the lot except the truck. I looked over at it. The cab was still dark, engine idling steady. No movement. I forced myself to lean closer to the glass. The prints weren't random smears like someone just dabbed their hand in paint and slapped it on. They were deliberate. Palms, fingers spread wide, overlapping like children pressing their hands to see how they matched. The streaks dragged downward, as though whatever left them had tried to climb up from the bottom of the windshield. I felt a panic rising in my chest. I turned the key in the ignition with shaking hands, and the engine roared to life. The wipers swiped across the glass, but instead of clearing, the bloody print smeared worse, spreading thin until it looked like the whole windshield was veined in red. I gagged at the sight, threw the car into reverse and peeled out of the lot, the rag and jug flying off the hood. I kept checking the rear-view mirror, convinced I'd see something chasing me down the highway. Nothing was there. After a few miles, the streaks began to fade, thinning out until the windshield was clear again, as though they'd never been there at all. By the time I reached Dallas, I had almost convinced myself I had hallucinated it. Maybe I was too tired. Maybe my brain had conjured something in the dark. But the next morning, when I walked out to my car in the hotel lot, my stomach turned to ice. On the hood, faint but unmistakable, were two small handprints. Perfectly clean. No blood this time, just prints in the thin layer of dust on the paint. They were smaller than any child's I'd ever seen. Fingers too short, palms too narrow, like they belonged to something that should not have been able to leave them. I checked the security footage later, desperate for some kind of answer. The hotel manager was kind enough to humor me. We fast-forwarded through the night. My car sat untouched in the corner of the lot. No one approaching it, no one walking near it. Yet when the sun rose, the prints were there. I never drove that route again. Even now, I can't drive at night without catching my eyes darting to the glass, searching for the faint outline of little hands pressing against it from the inside. And every so often, when the light hits just right, I swear I see them. It was a little after 9 p.m. on a humid Friday in late June, somewhere just outside of Corpus Christi. The air was sticky, heavy with that Gulf salt that clings to your skin and makes your clothes feel damp even when they're dry. I had been driving back from visiting a cousin in Kingsville, taking the rural highways to avoid the Friday night traffic on the bigger roads. My car wasn't anything special, a '98 Camry that usually got me where I needed to go without complaint. That night, though, as I rolled past mile markers with nothing but fields and tree lines around me, the engine coughed once, then again, and then the whole car jerked and sputtered like it had swallowed something it couldn't get down. The dashboard lights flickered and the car coasted to a stop on the shoulder with a sick final wheeze. I sat there with the engine dead, radio quiet, the only sound the faint hissing of crickets and the occasional passing car in the far distance. The nearest gas station I'd passed was easily 15 miles back, and I hadn't seen much of anything ahead besides barbed wire fences and silhouettes of farmhouses way off the road. I checked my phone, but there was no service, no bars, not even the little E for emergency calls. Just dead. I sat for a while, windows down, listening. The wind pushed the tall grass on the side of the road, making it sound like whispering. In the distance, I could see the faintest glow of something. At first, I thought it might have been the moon breaking through the clouds. But no, it was steadier than that, warmer. It looked like a porch light, one of those golden yellow bulbs that people leave burning overnight. It was faint, way off across the fields, but it was the only sign of civilization I could see in any direction. I debated with myself. The logical thing was to stay with the car. Someone would come by eventually. But it was Friday night, and the longer I waited, the less likely it felt that anyone would be taking this stretch of road. The glow of that porch light was comforting, promising safety and maybe a phone I could borrow. I told myself it couldn't be more than a mile or two. I locked the car, slung my purse over my shoulder, and started walking toward it. The road crunched under my sneakers at first, gravel giving, way to dirt. The air buzzed with insects, and now and then I caught the sharp croak of a frog out near a drainage ditch. The smell of damp earth and salt carried on the breeze. For a while I felt calm, even reassured by the rhythmic sound of my footsteps and the steady glow ahead. The porch light would dip in and out of view behind clusters of trees, then reappear, always in the same place, just a little further on. But after 20 minutes of walking, then 40, then what felt like an hour, the glow was no closer. I checked the time on my phone, but the screen was black, battery dead, though I swore I'd had at least 40% when the car broke down. My feet were starting to ache, but I kept pushing forward. The light stayed the same size, the same distance, just hanging there on the horizon like it was waiting for me. At some point I realized the road had disappeared. I couldn't remember when it had happened, whether it had been gradual or sudden, but the gravel shoulder had given way to packed dirt, and then the dirt to grass, and then I was just walking through knee-high weeds, the barbed wire fences stretching endlessly on either side. The light stayed ahead of me, steady and warm as though suspended in the night. I started talking out loud just to hear my own voice. Okay, so it's not far. You've been walking an hour, maybe 2. You're just tired. It's closer than it looks. Just keep going. My voice sounded too thin, too hollow against the vast emptiness around me. I don't know how long I walked. It could have been another hour, or it could have been all night. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me anymore, each step heavy and clumsy. My throat was dry, and the dampness of the air had turned sour, carrying the faint smell of mildew, like wet wood rotting in the dark. The light never wavered. It never grew brighter, never dimmer, just hovered there like a promise I could never quite reach. When the sky began to pale at the edges, soft gray creeping into the black, I thought I might finally be getting close. I could see more of the landscape now, the fields stretching endlessly flat, the tree line like a jagged seam in the distance. But when I looked ahead, the porch light was gone, just gone, as if someone had flipped a switch. I stood there, swaying on my feet, my heart hammering. My sneakers felt loose, almost flimsy. When I looked down, I saw the soles had worn thin, fraying at the edges. I'd bought them just last month, and now they looked like I'd been walking in them for years. I turned slowly, scanning the horizon, and that's when I saw it. My car, sitting on the side of the road exactly where I'd left it. The same bent antenna, the same dent in the bumper. Only now it looked older somehow, covered in a thin film of dust. The tires sagging slightly as though it had been sitting there a long time. I don't remember walking back. I only remember reaching the car, fumbling with the handle and finding it unlocked even though I'd been sure I'd locked it. The interior smelled stale, like old upholstery that had been baking in the sun for weeks. My phone was lying in the passenger seat. The battery was full. I sat there until the sun rose high enough to burn away the shadows. Eventually, a pickup truck came down the road, and an older man pulled over to ask if I needed help. He gave me a ride into town, and I told him my car had broken down. I didn't mention the porch light. He looked at me a little too long, then nodded like he'd heard it before. I never went back for the car, and I can't stop thinking about that glow in the distance, steady and warm, waiting. It was Friday, October 14th, 2022. I remember the exact date because I had been driving home from a late shift in Denton, Texas, and I'd texted my girlfriend earlier that I'd swing by her place after midnight. I worked maintenance for a commercial cleaning company at the time, so my hours were strange. Sometimes I'd be leaving buildings at 2 or 3 in the morning, driving back through empty stretches of highway when most people were asleep. That night the air was cooler than usual for mid-October, hovering around 55 degrees with a steady north wind that rattled the signs along University Drive. The sky was clear, moonless, stars bright enough to make you feel how far out you were once you passed the edge of town. I got on Highway 380 a little before 1 in the morning. It's a strange road at that hour, busy during the day, but at night it feels like some forgotten stretch. Flat fields on both sides and only the occasional cluster of lights where gas stations or feed stores break up the dark. I remember I had the radio on low, just background noise, and my headlights cutting through the kind of black that seems to swallow everything. I wasn't in a rush, but I kept a steady 70, the posted limit. For the first 10 minutes it was normal. 1 or 2 cars passed the other way, their beams vanishing into the distance. Then I noticed movement in the corner of my eye, just off the passenger side. At first I thought it was a reflection, something bouncing from the roadside markers. But when I turned my head I saw it, a black shape keeping pace with me on the gravel shoulder. My first thought was that it was a stray dog. People dump animals out there sometimes. I tapped the brakes, slowing to 65, and the shape slowed too. It wasn't running in the usual way, no up and down bounce of paws hitting dirt. It glided almost, legs moving but too smoothly, covering ground like it was on a track. My stomach tightened. I rolled down the window a crack, the wind tearing at my ears, and I heard nothing. No panting, no claws on gravel, nothing but the low hum of my tires. I told myself it was just a trick of speed, the way shadows and movement line up when you're driving. I sped back up to 70, then 75. The thing matched me perfectly. I got a better look then. It was definitely a dog, or at least shaped like one. Big, lean, with long legs and matted fur that seemed darker than the night around it. But what hit me hardest were the eyes. Or rather, the absence of them. Where eyes should have been were deep, hollow sockets. Empty, but glowing faintly, as if lit from inside with a dull red ember. The sight was so wrong, so unnatural, that I had to grip the steering wheel tighter to keep from swerving. I said out loud, "Jesus Christ," even though no one was with me. My voice cracked. The dog, or whatever it was, turned its head toward me without breaking stride. The red glow seemed to pulse once, brighter, like it was aware I'd noticed. My chest went cold. I did the stupidest thing I could have done. I honked. Just a quick tap, like that would scare it off. The sound blasted through the quiet, echoing across the empty fields. The dog's mouth opened, showing teeth that looked too long, too sharp, catching the light for a split second. It didn't bark, didn't snarl, just opened wide as if grinning. I floored it. 80, then 85. The engine whined, and the road blurred under my headlights. Still, the dog kept pace, not straining, not even breathing hard. My pulse hammered in my neck. I refused to look again, eyes locked on the stretch of asphalt ahead, but I could feel it there, right at the edge of my vision, gliding along like it had all the time in the world. Finally, headlights appeared in the distance, another car coming my way. As it neared, I glanced sideways, desperate for someone else to see it too. In that moment, the dog was gone. No shadow, no movement, nothing. Just the empty shoulder and the shimmer of heat rising off the road. I passed the oncoming car, heart still racing. For a few seconds I thought I'd imagined the whole thing, but when I looked at my side mirror I saw it, running behind me in the dark lane, dead center, keeping up with my taillights. The red glow of its empty sockets shone like a pair of reflectors. That was when panic took over. I remember saying, "Not real, not real, not real," under my breath, like a prayer. I pushed the car to 90. The mirror shook from the speed, but the red glow never wavered. It stayed behind me, The same impossible distance. Not closer, not farther. I didn't stop until I reached the first lit gas station on the edge of Denton. I swung hard into the lot, parked crooked at a pump, and jumped out. My legs were shaking so badly I had to steady myself on the hood. The station was empty, no clerk in sight. Just buzzing fluorescent lights and the hum of the ice cooler. I looked back at the road. Nothing. Just a long stretch of dark highway. I stood there for 10 minutes, waiting for something. Headlights, sound, anything. But the highway stayed empty. Eventually, I forced myself back into the car. My hands smelled like sweat and iron from gripping the steering wheel so hard. When I got to my girlfriend's place, I didn't tell her everything. I just said some stray dog had chased the car and freaked me out. She laughed, asked if it was a coyote, and I forced a smile. But that night, lying awake in her bed, I kept seeing those hollow sockets glowing in the dark. I didn't drive Highway 380 again for months. When I finally did, I told myself it was just fatigue, that late-night driving plays tricks on your mind. But last week, a coworker of mine brought up something strange over lunch. He said, "You ever hear about that black dog people see out near Denton? Runs alongside cars?" My cousin swears she saw it, said it didn't have eyes. I didn't answer him. I just stared at my food, my appetite gone. Because I knew he wasn't making it up. And now whenever I'm out on that highway after dark, I can't help but check the mirror every few seconds, dreading the moment when those red sockets appear again, keeping pace no matter how fast I drive. And the worst part is, sometimes I think I see the faint glow before it fades, like it's still out there waiting for me to be alone on that stretch of road again. It was September 14th, 2017, around 2:30 in the morning when this happened. I remember the exact time because I had just looked at the clock glowing on my dash, calculating how many more hours until I could collapse into bed. I was driving north, on SH 130, outside of Lockhart, Texas. The highway was quiet, the kind of quiet you only get on long stretches of road after midnight, where the hum of your tires becomes the only constant sound and every shadow looks deeper than it should. The weather was still warm, sticky in that late summer Texas way, and a thin mist had started to creep across the fields on either side of the road. I had the windows cracked because my AC was acting up, and the smell of damp earth and grass kept drifting into the car. I'd taken this route 100 times before. I was coming back from a late shift in Austin, too stubborn to crash on a buddy's couch, and I knew that stretch of highway well enough to drive it half asleep. There was nothing unusual about the night until I saw the glow up ahead. Dim, orangish lights cutting through the dark, sitting low to the ground. At first I thought it was construction, maybe one of those temporary setups they use when crews are working overnight. But as I got closer, I realized it was an old toll booth. That didn't make sense. SH 130 had been free for years at that point, and I knew for a fact that the last of the old toll structures had been torn down. But there it was, plain as day, or night I guess, squatting across the road like it had been there forever. 3 lanes, each with a little booth, the lights casting dull halos onto the asphalt. My stomach tightened. It looked wrong, not in any dramatic way, just off. Like seeing an old photograph come to life in front of you. I slowed down automatically, even though there weren't any other cars around. My headlights swept across the middle booth and I saw a man inside. He looked middle-aged, maybe late 40s, wearing one of those faded blue uniforms with a name patch I couldn't quite read. His skin had a pale, washed-out look, like he'd been under fluorescent bulbs too long, and his shoulders slumped forward as if he'd been sitting there for hours. He didn't look up right away. He just reached out, hand open, waiting for coins. I don't know why I rolled down my window. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was the sheer strangeness of the moment, but my hand went straight to the cup holder where I keep spare change. I fished out a couple quarters, leaned over, and dropped them into his palm. His skin was cool when his fingers brushed mine, cooler than it should have been in the heavy Texas air. He gave me a tired nod, slid the coins into a metal box beside him, and then hit a button. The arm lifted and I drove through like it was the most normal thing in the world. It wasn't until a mile or two later that the reality sank in. There shouldn't have been a toll booth. There hadn't been for years. My pulse picked up and I turned off the radio just to make sure I hadn't imagined the silence that followed me through that moment. Nothing but the drone of the road filled the car. I told myself I must have been tired, that maybe I'd mistaken a rest area or something else for the booth, but when I reached into my pocket at a gas station near San Marcos later that morning, the quarters were still there, resting cold against my fingers. I knew I had dropped them into his hand. I can still feel the way they slid from my palm to his. I didn't tell anyone at first. Who was going to believe me? Hey, I paid a ghost hole collector last night sounds like a punchline, not a story. But about a month later, I overheard a coworker talking about how her cousin had driven the same highway late at night and seen a man in a toll booth. Same. Description: slumped shoulders, pale face, hand outstretched. She said he hadn't given him any money because the whole thing felt too weird. The arm had still gone up, but when he looked in the rearview mirror, the booth was gone. Just empty highway stretching behind him. That's when I started paying attention. You hear things if you listen. A trucker at a diner in Luling swore he saw the man nearly every other week. Someone else told me he'd taken cash, but when she checked her purse later, every bill was still folded where she left it. Always late at night. Always when the road was at its quietest. People started calling him the toll booth ghost, like it was just another Texas roadside legend. I wish I could dismiss it as that. I wish I could believe I dreamed the whole thing up out of exhaustion, that my brain stitched together a hallucination out of mist, shadows, and too many late nights. But every time I feel coins in my pocket, I think about his hand, how cold it was, how he never looked me in the eye, how the whole booth seemed to hum with a silence that pressed down heavier than the night itself. And the worst part isn't what I saw, it's what I didn't. Because when I drove through and glanced in the rearview mirror, the arm lowered again. The man was still there, hand out, waiting. And for a second, just before the booth slipped out of sight, I thought I saw someone else behind him, standing in the shadows of that tiny space, taller and thinner, its face bent too close to his, like it was whispering into his ear, telling him to keep taking the coins. I haven't driven that stretch of highway since. It was late March of 2019, cool enough that the night still held on to a bit of winter, but spring was beginning to show itself in central Texas. I was driving back to Dallas from Austin after visiting a friend, and by the time I hit the Waco area, it was close to midnight. The stretch of I-35 north of Waco isn't exactly barren, but at night it feels like the whole world narrows to the highway, and the pale orange glow of truck stops every 30 miles or so. The air was damp, the kind of sticky cool that carries the faint smell of wet earth and diesel exhaust. I had the windows cracked and was letting the night air in, music playing low so I wouldn't get drowsy. Traffic was light, just a few semis spaced out ahead and behind me, their red taillights bobbing in the dark. Somewhere near Lorena, I saw her. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. The shoulder of the road was empty one moment, and then headlights caught a pale figure in a dress. She was walking barefoot along the gravel, slow and unsteady, like someone who had been crying for a long time. Her hair hung down around her face, dark and wet-looking. The dress, a faded pale pink satin, caught the light in an odd way, almost like it had once been bright but was dulled by dirt and age. I slowed instinctively, my heart lurching the way it does when you see someone stranded on a dark highway. She was maybe 18, 19 at most. A prom dress at midnight on the shoulder of I-35 didn't make sense, but my first thought wasn't ghosts or legends. It was danger. A girl that young shouldn't have been out there alone. I pulled over onto the shoulder about 20 feet ahead of her, hazards blinking. I remember the sound of my tires crunching the gravel and the way my headlights cast her, shadow long behind her. She didn't look up right away. She just kept walking, sobbing quietly, shoulders shaking. I lowered the passenger side window and leaned over. "Hey, are you okay? Do you need help?" My voice sounded strange in the night air, too loud, almost like it didn't belong there. She didn't respond. She just drifted closer to the car, her bare feet brushing against the gravel. I could hear the soft crunch with each step, deliberate and slow. She reached the car and stopped right at the door, her face still obscured by her hair. Up close, I could see the fabric of her dress was torn in places, stained darker along the hem. I thought maybe it was mud. I told myself it was mud. I unlocked the door, and for a second I hesitated. Something in the air felt wrong. The night was still, heavy, almost like the sound had been drained out of it. Even the hum of the highway seemed muted. I told myself I was just on edge because it was late. "You can sit inside," I said, softer this time. "I'll take you somewhere safe." That was when I heard it. The faint dinging of my seatbelt warning. The kind of sound that only goes off when someone sits down without buckling in. My stomach dropped because the door never opened. She was still standing outside, right there where the headlights caught her. But the chime was insistent, clear, as if someone had just climbed into the passenger seat. I froze. My eyes flicked to the seat beside me. Empty. Perfectly empty. But the seatbelt light on my dashboard glowed red. I swear to God, the fabric of the seat looked pressed down slightly, as if weight had been placed on it. My chest tightened and every hair on my arm stood up. I looked back at her through the open window. She wasn't crying anymore. She was perfectly still, head tilted down, hair hanging like a curtain. I whispered something, I don't even remember what, and threw the car into drive. Gravel sprayed behind me as I pulled back onto the highway. My heart was hammering and my hands were slick on the wheel. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing in the same place, the hazards flashing red against her pale dress. Then the road curved and she was gone. I drove for miles before I dared to pull over again. At a truck stop north of Hillsboro, I parked under the fluorescent lights, shaking. I killed the engine and just sat there staring at the passenger seat. The warning light was off now. The seat looked normal. I opened the glove compartment just to hear some kind of sound, anything that reminded me of the ordinary. A trucker, walking past, gave me a nod like everything was perfectly fine. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been sitting beside me. That maybe in some way I couldn't see, they still were. When I told my friend about it later, he didn't laugh like I expected. He just got quiet and asked me if it happened near Waco. I said yeah, south of town, maybe 10 minutes before. Lorena. He told me that people have been talking about a girl in a prom dress on that stretch of highway for years. Some say she was killed on prom night in the 80s, a car wreck that threw her onto the shoulder. Others say she ran from something, someone, and never made it to the interstate. Different stories, but the same ending. People see her walking barefoot, crying. If they stop, she vanishes when they try to help, but the car reacts as if she got in. The seatbelt alarm, the indentation, even cold air blowing from nowhere. I don't know what I believe. All I know is I wasn't alone that night. I never saw her face, and maybe that's for the best. But every time I drive that way now, I keep my eyes straight ahead. I don't slow down. And when the seatbelt chime dings for no reason, because it has twice since then, I don't look at the passenger seat. I just grip the wheel tighter and keep driving because I don't want to know who's sitting there. It was late September of 2019 when this happened, just outside of Killeen, Texas. I remember the exact date because it was the day after my cousin's wedding in Temple, and I had stayed behind to help clean up the reception hall. I didn't leave until after dark, somewhere around 9:30 p.m. The weather was still clinging to that humid Texas warmth that never seems to let up, even in the fall, though the night air had a faint coolness that hinted at the season changing. The roads were mostly empty, and the stretch I was on, heading back west toward Copperas Cove, was long, straight, and flat, with nothing but mesquite and cedar brush on either side. You could see headlights in the rearview mirror for miles, if there were any, but that night there weren't. I was tired, running on too little sleep from the night before and trying to keep myself awake by fiddling with the radio. That's when I noticed the convoy. 3 military trucks, the kind you see rolling out of Fort Hood all the time. Big, olive-drab beasts with canvas backs. They pulled onto the road ahead of me from some side access road I swear I hadn't seen before. There were no headlights, just the dull glow of their taillights, evenly spaced and moving in perfect unison. At first, I didn't think much of it. You live around there long enough and you get used to the military presence. Helicopters, overhead columns of Humvees, the rumble of artillery in the distance, it all becomes background noise. But something about this convoy struck me as off. I matched their speed, staying maybe 200 yards behind. They were going a steady 50, never speeding up, never slowing down. For 10 minutes straight, I followed them along that flat, blacktop. No turns, no intersections, just one long, empty road under a sky full of stars. I remember glancing in my side mirror and thinking how strange it was that I hadn't seen another car in either direction that whole time. Just me and those 3 trucks. Then they were gone. I don't mean they turned off somewhere. I don't mean I lost sight of them over a hill. I mean they were there one moment. 3 sets of taillights glowing red in the dark. And the next, the road ahead of me was completely empty. Nothing but the faint shimmer of heat rising off the asphalt in my headlights. I actually slammed on my brakes thinking maybe I had zoned out. Maybe they'd pulled off and I just hadn't noticed. But there was nowhere to go. No driveways, no dirt turnoffs, no clearings in the brush, just solid empty road stretching on in both directions. I pulled over and killed my engine, sitting there in silence with my hazards clicking in the dark. The only sound was the crickets and the faint tick of my cooling engine. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I found myself gripping the steering wheel like I was bracing for impact. I don't know why. There was no logical reason for it, but I felt exposed, like standing in the middle of a field during a lightning storm. I kept expecting headlights to reappear ahead of me, but the road stayed empty. I finally forced myself to keep driving. Every shadow seemed sharper, every rustle in the brush louder. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was pacing me out there in the dark, just beyond the reach of my headlights. When I finally saw the glowing sign for Copperas Cove up ahead, I swear I almost cried from relief. I didn't tell anyone about it that night. Who would believe me? Over the next week, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the trucks were running blackout drills and turned off their lights. Maybe they had some kind of side road access that I just didn't see in the dark. But the thing is, I drove that same stretch of road in the daylight the following weekend, slow enough to look for anything I might have missed. There was nothing. No side roads, no hidden entrances. Just that same unbroken stretch of blacktop bordered by brush. When I finally mentioned it to a coworker over lunch, half joking, trying to downplay how much it had gotten under my skin, he went quiet. Then he told me his uncle had once seen something similar back in the early 90s. A whole convoy, lights and all, just gone between 1 mile marker and the next. He said people around here sometimes whisper about it, usually after a couple of beers, but no one talks too loud. They say there are things that get moved out of Fort Hood that never show up on any manifest. Convoys that roll at night and don't always make it where they're supposed to. Some folks call them phantom transports. Others say they're experiments. Vehicles that aren't entirely meant for our roads. I laughed it off in the moment, but the more I thought about it, the less funny it felt. Every time I've driven that road since, I catch myself watching the mirrors, waiting to see a line of taillights wink out of existence again, and sometimes late at night when traffic thins out, I get the sense I'm not alone on that stretch. Like there's still something moving alongside me, keeping perfect pace, just out of sight. I'll check the mirrors, the shoulder, the brush, and there's nothing. But the feeling doesn't go away. It never does. If you ever find yourself near Killeen after dark, driving west on a straight, empty stretch of road, and you happen to fall in behind a line of army trucks, don't follow. Don't even look too long, because I think whatever's moving with them doesn't always stay on their side of the glass, and I'd rather keep this story written down than find out what happens when it finally decides to climb in. It was the first week of September in 2016, a Thursday night. I remember because I had just finished my last class of the day at Sul Ross State University in Alpine, Texas, and I was heading back home to Del Rio. The drive is about 2.5 hours, mostly desert highway and scrubland, long stretches of nothingness broken up by gas stations and the occasional diner. It had been a clear, hot day, the kind where the sun makes the asphalt ripple, but by the time I got on Highway 90, it was dark. The temperature had dropped into the low 70s, still warm, but with that dry desert coolness settling in. I was 21 at the time, still new to long solo drives at night. My old Oro 3 Toyota Corolla hummed steadily along, headlights cutting through the darkness. I had the radio on low, some static-filled country station fading in and out, and a half-empty bottle of Big Red sweating in the cup holder. The smell of dust clung to the car's interior, mixed with the faint tang of gasoline from when I had filled up in Marathon. For the first hour or so, it was uneventful. A few trucks passed me, their headlights blazing in my mirrors. But mostly, it was just me and the endless stretch of highway. The stars were clear above, scattered thick across the sky the way you only see them in West Texas. Somewhere past Sanderson, maybe around 11:15 p.m., I saw movement up ahead. It happened fast. Something darted across the road, a flash of pale color in my headlights. I slammed the brakes, the car jerking forward as tires squealed. I thought it was a deer. My heart was racing, palms slick on the steering wheel. When the car rolled to a stop, the road ahead was empty. I sat there for a second, breathing hard, listening to the engine tick and hum. Then I heard it, a scream. It wasn't faint. It wasn't far away. It came from the brush just off the shoulder, maybe 30 feet into the mesquite and cactus. A woman's voice, raw, ragged, like her throat was tearing with the effort. "Help! Oh God, please help me!" I froze. Every rational part of me wanted to throw the car and drive and get the hell out of there, but my legs moved before my brain could catch up. I grabbed the mag light I kept under the seat, stepped out, and the desert night air hit me. Warm, dry, smelling faintly of sage. The brush was thick and black beyond the reach of my headlights. My flashlight beam cut across rocks, brittle grass, tangled branches. "Hello?" I called, voice shaking more than I meant it to. "Are you hurt?" There was no answer, just the wind moving through the mesquite. Then again the scream. Louder, this time, and closer. "Help me!" I felt my stomach drop. The sound was strange. At first it sounded real, but the longer I listened, the more wrong it felt. The voice carried no direction. It was everywhere and nowhere at once. I backed up toward the car, light trembling in my hand. That's when I saw my tires. Both rear ones were slashed open. Not just punctured, ripped, long, deep cuts like someone had taken a knife straight across them. I swear on my life they were fine when I left Alpine, and there was no way both blew out at once just from stopping. The scream came again, this time circling me, as if it had moved behind the car. My throat went dry. I got back in, locked the doors, and sat gripping the maglite with both hands. For the next hour, I sat in that car with the headlights on, scanning the brush. The screams didn't stop. Sometimes they were close enough that I swore I could hear the rasp of breath behind the words. Sometimes they drifted far off, only to come rushing back, sharper, more desperate. At 12:40 a.m., my phone had no service, which wasn't unusual out there. I kept trying anyway, thumb shaking as I hit redial. Nothing but dead air. I must have dozed off because the next thing I remember was waking with a start to silence. The screams were gone. The only sound was the tick of the engine cooling and the buzz of cicadas in the distance. I thought maybe it was over, maybe whatever had been happening was finished. But then came the sound of footsteps on gravel. Slow, deliberate, crunching just outside the car. I didn't dare move. My breath caught in my throat. The steps circled once, twice. Then came the tap of fingers on the rear windshield. Just two, sharp knocks like someone rapping to be let in. I stayed frozen, not even blinking until the first gray light of dawn crept across the horizon. When I finally stepped out, the desert was still, the brush empty. The only sign anything had happened were the shredded tires and two small handprints smeared across the dust of the rear glass. They were too small to belong to any adult. A rancher found me around 8 a.m. and helped tow the car into Del Rio. I never told him what happened. I've never told anyone until now. He just kept shaking his head at the tires, saying no coyote or animal could have done that. I don't know what I heard that night. Maybe it was some trick of the desert, some strange echo that made the wind sound like a woman screaming. But I can't explain the handprints. I can't explain the slashed tires. All I know is every time I drive Highway 90 at night, I keep my eyes forward and never, ever stop. It was late September of 2021, a Wednesday night to be exact. I know because I had just gotten off a 12-hour shift at the plant, and I remember checking my phone at 11:48 p.m. before starting the drive home. The air was still heavy with that sticky Texas heat even though fall was supposed to be creeping in, and the windshield carried that faint film of humidity that made the light from the street lamps smear across the glass. I was taking Highway 45 north heading back toward Spring. Traffic was light. At that hour, the highway feels endless, a dark river with scattered headlights cutting through. I kept the radio low, some late-night talk host rambling about football, and my eyelids were doing that half-closed thing they do when your body wants to shut down, but you know you can't. That stretch of highway is nothing special. Just exit after exit, the occasional gas station glow in the distance and those looming concrete overpasses that cast long shadows over the road. I remember the first time I saw him, I almost dismissed it as exhaustion. I was approaching one of those overpasses near the Aldine area when my headlights picked up a figure standing on the railing. Not beside it, not near it, on it. He was balanced like some kind of tightrope walker, arms stretched wide, his body rigid against the night sky. My stomach did that drop it does when you think you're about to see something awful. Jesus Christ, I muttered, easing my foot off the gas. I expected him to jump, anyone would. That's what you think when you see someone on the edge like that. But he didn't. He just stood there, arms out, motionless. His clothes didn't flutter, though the wind off the highway should have been strong. For the briefest second, my headlights caught his face, or maybe they didn't. I can't describe it because I didn't really see features, just the impression of a man, pale where his face should have been, and dark everywhere else. By the time I passed under the overpass and looked in the rearview mirror, he was gone. Not climbing down, not walking away. Just gone. I pulled into a Whataburger parking lot a few exits later to collect myself. I told myself I was tired, that I'd imagined it. But when I got home, I couldn't shake it. Out of curiosity, I searched "man on overpass Highway 45" on my phone. That's when I found out about the suicide in 1987. A man who'd jumped from that same overpass late at night. For a few weeks, I kept it to myself. Who was I going to tell? Hey, I saw a ghost while driving home from work. People already thought I was on edge from the overtime. But then it happened again. This time it was raining, a light drizzle that turned the road slick. My wipers squeaked back and forth and the smell of wet asphalt filled the cab. I came around the bend and there he was again, arms stretched, standing dead center on the railing. Only this time, he tilted his head slightly like he was listening. I swear he looked right at me. My chest tightened so hard I thought I was about to pass out behind the wheel. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles popped, whispering to myself, "Don't look, don't look, don't look." When I passed under and forced myself to glance back, he was gone again. Same as before. The third time, I wasn't alone. A coworker of mine, Dan, was catching a ride because his car had broken down. We were talking about nothing in particular when he went quiet mid-sentence. "You see that?" he asked, his voice suddenly sharp. I followed his gaze and there the man was, balanced, arms out. This time, Dan saw it too. His hand went to the dash like he wanted me to slow down. "What the hell's he doing up there?" Dan muttered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat felt locked shut. We passed under, and like always, the man vanished. Dan twisted in his seat to look behind us. "Where'd he go?" I just shook my head. "Man, that's screwed up," he said, rubbing his face. "That's real screwed up." That was the last time Dan ever carpooled with me. He wouldn't say it outright, but I could tell he didn't want to risk seeing the overpass man again. Over the next few months, I saw him 4 more times. Each time, the same stance, the same silence. But I started to notice little differences. The last time, earlier this year, his arms weren't spread wide. They were hanging at his sides and his head was tilted down, staring directly at the cars below. I couldn't take it anymore. I actually called the sheriff's department once, reporting that someone was about to jump. The dispatcher sighed and told me I wasn't the first to call. Units checked it out. Nothing there, she said, almost like she was tired of the whole thing. I don't know why I'm writing this now. Maybe because last week something changed. I hadn't seen him in months and part of me thought maybe it was finally over. But when I drove under the overpass on Friday night, he wasn't up on the railing. He was on the shoulder of the highway instead, standing, waiting. And this time, he turned his head as I passed, following me with his eyes. I didn't see a pale blur of a face anymore. I saw a man, gaunt, hollow-cheeked, his mouth stretched into something that wasn't quite a smile. I nearly wrecked the car trying to keep my eyes on the road. My whole body went cold. When I checked the mirror, he was gone again. But it felt different this time, like he wasn't stuck up there anymore, like he'd decided to come down. And I can't shake the feeling that one of these nights, he's not going to vanish when I look back. He's going to be standing right on the shoulder next to me, close enough to touch the door handle. I've started taking the long way home, adding 20 minutes to my drive just to avoid that overpass. But the truth is, every time I see an overpass now, any overpass, and I'm waiting for him, arms wide, or worse, standing there on the ground waiting for me to stop. If you're ever driving down Highway 45 at night and you see him, don't slow down, don't look too long, and whatever you do, don't stop. Because I think if you stop, he won't disappear, he'll get in. It was the spring of 2019, late March, one of those deceptively warm Texas evenings where the sun lingers just long enough to trick you into thinking summer has already arrived. My girlfriend at the time, Danielle, had just gotten her first reel camera and was eager to take it everywhere, snapping shots of whatever she thought might look pretty. We were driving down Highway 6, heading south from College Station toward Houston. The windows cracked to let in the smell of grass and warm asphalt. The air had that sticky sweetness of early wildflowers. When we spotted a wide field on the west side of the highway, painted thick with blue bonnets in full bloom, she begged me to pull over. The shoulder was narrow, but there was enough gravel to park without blocking traffic. Cars hummed by in steady intervals, their headlights just starting to flicker on as the sun dipped lower. I remember checking my phone as we stepped out, 7:18 p.m. exactly. The light was golden, that perfect hour photographers drool over. Danielle laughed, tossing her hair as she ran ahead, camera bouncing against her chest, calling over her shoulder for me to hurry. We climbed down into the field, wading knee-deep through flowers that bent under our weight, but sprang back almost defiantly. I wasn't really paying attention to where we were going. I was just watching her, trying not to trip on uneven ground. She knelt, crouching low to capture the flowers at eye level, whispering little sounds of satisfaction when the shots came, out the way she wanted. We must have wandered in 30, maybe 40 yards. The highway noise was still behind us, but muffled as if the flowers swallowed the sound. When Danielle finally stood, brushing pollen and grass off her knees, she turned back toward the road, lifted her camera to get a wide shot of the car, with the sunset behind it. I followed her gaze and my stomach dropped. There was no car. At first I thought maybe the flowers obscured it from this angle, but when I squinted and tried to trace the gravel shoulder, there was nothing. Not just the car, no road. The stretch of Highway 6 we had pulled off on, the shoulder, the passing cars, even the faint sound of tires, it was all gone. Wait, what the hell? I muttered. But Danielle was already jogging forward, holding her camera like she could, snap proof that what we were seeing wasn't real. The only thing in front of us was more field, the blue bonnets rolling in gentle waves as far as I could see, and beyond them, a thin line of trees etched against the horizon. She turned to me, face pale. Did we walk the wrong way? No, I said firmly, though my voice cracked. We didn't. I turned in a slow circle, Behind us was just more of the same. Flowers, sky, no sign of the asphalt ribbon we'd just stepped off minutes ago. My phone still read 7:26 p.m., but the little LTE symbol had vanished. No bars. We argued briefly about which way to walk, both trying to sound rational while panic pressed harder against our throats. In the end, we picked a direction and started moving, telling ourselves the road had to be close. The flowers thinned, giving way to patches of bare soil that looked wrong somehow, like the ground had been burned in wide, shallow streaks years ago and never fully healed. As we walked, I noticed the air was different too. Heavier. The smell of wildflowers had soured into something faintly metallic like wet iron. Even Danielle, who usually hummed or filled silence with idle chatter, was quiet now. Every so often she glanced over her shoulder. At one point she whispered, "Do you feel like someone's following us?" I hadn't wanted to admit it, but I had. Not footsteps exactly, but that weight on your back when you're not alone. I forced myself to keep walking. An hour passed, maybe more, and the sky never seemed to change. It stayed pinned in that strange, not quite sunset haze, like a photograph, stuck in place. Eventually, we stumbled out of the field, not onto Highway 6, but onto a cracked two-lane road lined with trees on both sides. The yellow paint down the middle was nearly worn away, and no cars passed, no sound of engines anywhere. Danielle sat down hard on the pavement, clutching her camera to her chest like a life preserver. "This isn't right," she whispered. We weren't gone that long. I checked my phone again. The time still said 7:26. The battery percentage hadn't moved either. When I showed her, she closed her eyes and muttered, "No, no, no." We tried walking the road, first one way, then the other, but both stretches seemed to curve endlessly without revealing a sign, a driveway, anything that might lead us back. I kept expecting to see headlights cresting a hill, but the road stayed empty. At one point, I thought I heard a car horn far in the distance, muffled and distorted. But when I stopped to listen, the air went silent again, so quiet I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. That was when Danielle said something I'll never forget. She stood up abruptly and whispered, "Don't look behind us, just don't." My body froze. I wanted to ask what she meant, but she started walking faster, almost running, her camera banging against her hip. I forced myself forward, but curiosity gnawed at me. Against every instinct screaming not to, I glanced back over my shoulder. There was nothing there, just the empty road and the edge of the field. But for half a second, I could have sworn the bluebonnets weren't flowers anymore. They were faces, hundreds of them, tilted upward, their hollow eyes fixed on us. I blinked and it was only flowers again. By the time we finally emerged onto a busier stretch of road, later identified as Highway 36, nearly 20 miles from where we'd pulled over, it was fully dark. Cars whizzed past, headlights blinding. When I checked my phone again, the time had jumped to 11:42 p.m. My battery was nearly drained. We flagged down a man in a pickup who reluctantly agreed to drive us back to where we thought we'd left the car. When we got there, the shoulder was empty. No gravel tracks, no sign I'd ever parked there. Danielle broke up with me 2 months later. She said she couldn't stop dreaming about the flowers, and in every dream they were taller, their blossoms stretching open to reveal gaping mouths. I still drive that stretch of Highway 6 sometimes, slowing at the spot where I swear we pulled over. But the field looks different now. There are no bluebonnets there anymore, just dry, bare earth. And every time I pass, I feel like something is still waiting for me to stop. It was just past midnight on Friday, June 14th, 2019, when I left Lubbock heading east on Highway 114. The temperature gauge on my dash read 79 degrees, warm for that late, but the sky was clear and the air was still. The hum of my old Fords, tires on the asphalt was steady, hypnotic. I'd had a long day working overtime and I was pushing through the drive to make it to my cousin's place in Denton by morning. The road was empty, just 2 dark lanes stretching through flat fields that seemed to go on forever. When you drive that part of Texas at night, it feels like the whole world disappears around you. No lights, No houses, just the faint glow of the horizon and your own beams carving a tunnel ahead. I had the windows cracked and the air smelled faintly of dust and fertilizer from the farms. My radio was tuned low, more background than music, something to keep my brain from slipping into that dangerous highway trance. It started around the tiny town of Rawls. I passed through the blinking red light at the intersection. Nobody else in sight, and noticed headlights flare up in my rear view a few minutes later. At first, I didn't think much of it. Out there, you can go an hour without seeing another car, but eventually someone always shows. The headlights were bright, high up. I figured it was a pickup. White, from the way it caught my brake lights. It kept a good distance at first, half a mile back, just hovering. But when I crested the next hill, it was closer. Too close. I slowed a little, hoping they'd pass. People get impatient behind you on those two-lane highways. But the truck didn't pass. Instead, it settled right on my bumper, close enough that its lights washed out my mirror and painted the inside of my cab in stark white. I remember squinting and reaching up to flick the rear view into night mode. My pulse picked up. I tapped my brakes just enough to flash the lights, a polite signal. The truck responded by edging even closer, practically nudging me along. "All right, buddy," I muttered, out loud, though there was no one to hear me. "Go around." It didn't. I shifted my truck a little right, putting my tires against the rumble strip, but the pickup stayed glued to me. I couldn't make out the driver. The glare was too much. All I could see was that old body style, maybe late 90s or early 2000s boxy frame. White paint that seemed to glow unnaturally bright in my mirrors. It had no front plate that I could see. That struck me later. At the time, I was too focused on keeping the wheel straight. After 5 minutes of this, my nerves were shot. I pushed my speed up to 75, then 80. The pickup matched me effortlessly. I slowed down to 50. It slowed too. Always the same distance, never passing. Just watching. I started talking to myself, something I do when I'm nervous. Okay, maybe drunk, maybe some idiot kids, just ignore them. Get to the next town. I knew the next decent stop was Crosbyton, still 10 miles ahead. It felt like forever. The road dipped into a shallow curve, and for just a second the truck's headlights fell back. I thought maybe it had turned, or pulled off. Relief hit me so hard my shoulders loosened. But when the road straightened, the lights were right back where they'd been, close enough I could swear I felt heat from them through the glass. That's when I noticed something else. Tire noise. Mine was steady, the familiar thrum of rubber, on highway. But when I focused, there was no second sound, no hiss of another set of tires on the road behind me. The pickup was there, plain as day in my mirror, but silent. I turned the radio off and strained to hear. Nothing but my own engine and the hollow wind through the cracked window. I felt my scalp prickle. By the time I hit the edge of Crosbyton, I had a plan. There's a small all-night gas station on the right just before the main drag. I figured I'd pull in, make it obvious I wasn't alone. Maybe call the cops if the guy followed me. I slowed as I came up on it, signal blinking. The truck stayed right behind. My stomach dropped. If it followed me in, I didn't know what I'd do. I pulled into the lot, tires crunching gravel, and swung wide so I could watch behind me. The pickup rolled up to the entrance and vanished. I don't mean it turned off, I mean 1 second it was there in my mirror, glaring white and huge, and the next, nothing. The road was empty. No brake lights, no turn signal. Just gone. I sat there, hands locked on the wheel, heart hammering. I waited a full 5 minutes staring at the highway, expecting it to come barreling through. Nothing did. Eventually, I pulled up to the pump, killed the engine, and stepped out into the sticky night air. The smell of gasoline and hot asphalt grounded me. There was a kid behind the counter inside, maybe 19, fiddling with his phone. I almost went in to say something, to ask if he'd seen a white pickup come through, but I couldn't figure out how to start. What would I even say? Instead, I topped off my tank with shaking hands, used the restroom, and got back on the road. I told myself it was over. Some weird trick of reflection, maybe. Fatigue. But 15 minutes east of town, just when the farmland opened up again, I checked my mirror. Headlights. High up, white, far back, but gaining. My throat went dry. I drove 90 all the way to Lorenzo, then Idalou, clinging to the speedometer like it was a lifeline. The pickup never passed, never fell behind, just hung there, a constant pressure. Every time I hit a town, I thought about pulling over, but the memory of it vanishing in Crosbyton kept me moving. What if it disappeared again, only to be waiting, once I was alone? The last clear sight I had was outside Idalou. Straight road, flat land stretching black under the stars. The pickup was 10 car lengths back. I blinked, looked down to check my speed, looked up, and it was gone. No taillights in the distance, no dust, no turnoff. Just me, the empty highway, and a sick, hollow pit in my chest. I made it to Denton at dawn, pale and trembling, too wired to sleep. My cousin laughed when I told him. Said I'd spooked myself. Said West Texas can play tricks on you when you're tired. Maybe he's right. But sometimes, late at night, I'll catch myself checking the mirror, just to be sure. And every so often I swear I catch a flicker of white hanging back in the dark, waiting. I don't know what happens if it ever decides to get closer, and I don't want to find out. It was a Saturday evening in late October of 2019, about an hour south of Dallas. The weather had just turned that week, the air finally losing its sticky warmth and settling into that crisp, dry coolness that means fall in Texas. My wife, our daughter, and I had been driving up I-45 after visiting her parents in Houston. We left later than we meant to, a little after 7 p.m., so by the time we were cutting through the middle of the state, the sky was already inky black, the kind of darkness you only get on the open road between cities, where the highway lights are sparse and the land stretches out flat for miles. The drive had been uneventful until we hit the stretch somewhere north of Centerville. That's where the construction started. Orange cones lined the right lane, funneling traffic into one lane. I slowed down with everyone else. At first it seemed normal, just another late-night highway project, but after a mile or two the cones got strange. They weren't evenly spaced anymore. Some were knocked over lying in the road and others were set almost diagonally, like whoever placed them hadn't been paying attention. Looks sloppy, my wife muttered, leaning forward in her seat. Our daughter was asleep in the back, her head tilted against the window. Yeah, I said. I thought about how road crews usually work with precision, straight lines, reflectors, flashing signs. But there were no flashing signs, no trucks, no workers. Just cones stretching into the dark. About 5 miles later, traffic thinned out until it felt like we were the only ones on the road. That's when I saw the detour sign, a reflective arrow pointing to the right, toward a narrow dirt road that cut into the woods. A few cones blocked off the highway past that point, funneling us toward the turn. Are you serious? I said aloud, mostly to myself. I slowed the car and squinted at the road. No lights, no other cars turning, no sign of heavy machinery. Just that dirt path vanishing into the trees. My wife shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should just keep going. The cones are blocking the highway. Looks like we don't have a choice. I eased us onto the dirt road. The crunch of gravel under the tires was louder than it should have been. My headlights lit up the trees on both sides, twisted, oaks and pine that pressed in close. The road was rough but drivable, and I kept thinking we'd see the glow of other cars' taillights ahead of us, but we never did. We drove like that for 10 minutes, then 20. The highway should have reconnected by then, but the road only grew narrower, more rutted. Dust hung in the air, catching the beams of the headlights. I checked the rearview mirror, half expecting to see another pair of headlights behind us. Nothing. Just blackness. Finally, the road dead-ended. A rusted metal gate stretched across, chained shut. On the other side, I could see nothing but more trees. Great, I muttered, pulling to a stop. My wife leaned forward, peering through the windshield. This doesn't make sense. Why would they route people this way? I didn't have an answer. I put the car in reverse and turned us around. Gravel popped under the tires as I steered us back toward where we'd come from. I remember thinking it was strange there weren't any other cars behind us. We couldn't have been the only ones. Detoured. But when we got back to the highway, the cones were gone. I don't mean moved aside or cleared up. I mean gone. The entrance to that dirt road looked like any other random break in the trees. Nothing but grass and gravel leading nowhere. The highway stretched on, smooth and empty. No signs of construction at all. I slowed almost to a stop, staring. My wife whispered, "Where are the cones?" Like she was afraid to say it too loud. I didn't answer her. I just pressed the gas and got us moving again, back onto I-45. My hands were damp on the wheel. We didn't talk much for the rest of the drive, but every time I checked the mirrors, I swore I could see faint dust swirling behind us, even though there were no other cars around. We got home around midnight. I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about how long that road went, how deliberate the detour felt. The next morning I looked it up. There hadn't been any reported construction on that stretch of I-45. No lane closures, no detours. I've driven that highway dozens of times since then. There's no dirt road, no break in the trees where we turned, just unbroken asphalt cutting north and south. My daughter doesn't remember that night. My wife and I don't talk about it much, but sometimes when we're on I-45 after dark, she'll glance out the window and say, almost under her breath, "Watch for the cones." And every time she does, I feel that same sick weight in my stomach, because deep down I know if we ever see them again, we won't come back.